started with the sound of keys in the door. Familiar, but something felt off. Lily had been gone for 4 days on what she claimed was a corporate retreat. One of those team-building getaways where they force you into trust falls and icebreaker games, only now they added yoga and wine tastings to make it feel less like a hostage situation. I didn't think much of it when she left. Gave her a kiss goodbye, told her to have fun, and went back to watching the game. We'd been through a rough patch lately. Long hours, short tempers, but I chalked it up to burnout. We needed space. Maybe this would help. But when she walked through the door Sunday night, suitcase in one hand, tote bag slung over her shoulder, she wasn't the woman I said goodbye to. She was wearing a men's dress shirt, pale blue, crisp collar, rolled up at the sleeves, just long enough to cover the top of her thighs, which were bare except for that familiar pair of black cotton shorts she wore to bed sometimes. But I knew immediately that shirt wasn't hers, and it sure as hell wasn't mine. It hung too wide on her shoulders and too loose around her waist. It wasn't just a shirt, it was a message. Or maybe a slip-up. She didn't say a word. Just walked right past me like I wasn't standing there in the living room waiting for her. She didn't look tired. She looked clean. Almost too clean. Her hair was damp. Not sweaty, just freshly washed. Her makeup was gone. And yet her skin looked dewy. Like she just stepped out of a luxury spa. No hug. No smile. No, I missed you. Hey, I said. My voice came out more confused than anything. I watched her move through the house like a stranger. She didn't stop walking. Exhausted, she mumbled as she passed, then headed straight into the bathroom. I heard the shower start running less than a minute later. Just like that. No talk. No how was your weekend. Not even eye contact. I stood in the hallway for a few seconds, staring at the closed door, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. My mind scrambled for innocent explanations. Maybe her suitcase got soaked, and someone lent her clothes. Maybe it was laundry day at the cabin. Maybe she really was just tired, and I was overthinking it. But the thing is, I know Lily. I've known her for years. I know when she's distracted. I know when she's upset. And I damn sure know when she's hiding something. I walked back toward the suitcase she'd dropped by the door. It was zipped up, perfectly tidy. Normally, Lily's travel bags were half unpacked before she even set them down. Shoes kicked off, hoodie over the back of a chair, water bottle forgotten on the floor. But this time, everything was sealed tight like she was hoping I wouldn't look. I crouched down, hesitated for half a second, then unzipped it. Inside, her things were neatly folded. Swimsuit, toiletries, a paperback novel she never finished, a pair of sneakers she barely wore. But something was missing. The outfit she left in, black jeans, green v-neck, leather flats, wasn't there. Not in the suitcase. Not in the hamper. Nowhere. I stood up slowly. The air in the house felt heavier somehow. I walked past the bathroom and caught the faintest scent of something unfamiliar. Not her shampoo. Not my deodorant. Something masculine. Cologne, but not the kind you buy at Dr. * stores. Something subtle and expensive. The scent clung to the shirt, and suddenly I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind or finally seeing something I should have noticed weeks ago. The shirt itself wasn't special, really basic Oxford style. One chest pocket. Slight wrinkle along the collar. But it wasn't just the fact that it existed. It was the way she wore it. Like it belonged to her now. Like she'd grown comfortable in someone else's world. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall, trying to remember if she'd ever brought up any of her coworkers by name. The retreat was supposed to be team only. A weekend of goal-setting and bonfire chats with middle managers. I had no reason to doubt it at first. Lily had always been the stable one, the planner. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't the cheating type. At least that's what I told myself. An hour later, she reappeared from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her hair tied up, face bare. She moved with this practiced ease, like nothing was wrong. Like I didn't just watch her return home in a stranger's shirt and pretend like it was normal. "You hungry?" she asked, walking toward the kitchen. "Whose shirt is that?" I asked, not moving from the couch. She paused. Barely. A half-second beat in her step. Then she shrugged. Oh, some inside joke from the retreat. The guys gave it to me after a card game. Said I was the MVP of the night. She gave a short laugh, eyes still on the fridge. You know how stupid those things get after a few drinks, right? I said quietly. She grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, cracked it open, and leaned against the counter like nothing had just happened. Like she hadn't come home in someone else's clothes. Like I wasn't sitting there slowly unraveling. I didn't ask more. I didn't push. But something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the lie. It was the way it rolled off her tongue. Clean. Rehearsed. Tossed into the air like a line she'd used before. I didn't even think she realized how practiced she sounded. That bothered me more than anything. That night I didn't sleep. I laid there next to her in bed, listening to her breath slow as she drifted off. I stared at the ceiling, mind racing, heart pounding. Something had broken, and even if I couldn't name it yet, I felt it. The silence between us was no longer comfortable. It was suffocating. Around 2 a.m., I got out of bed and walked into the living room, pulled out my laptop. I started scrolling through social media. Not hers. She barely posted anymore. But I remembered the name of one guy from her team, Chris, the one who always tagged people in group sh*ts. Sure enough, he'd posted stories from the weekend. Beach sh*ts. Drinks on a patio. A boomerang of a champagne toast. But then I paused on one frame. The camera was swinging left to right during a fire pit scene, blurry, quick. But there, barely in the background, was Lily. She was wrapped around a man, her arms around his back. His hand was at her waist. The shirt, the same damn shirt. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. My jaw clenched. I rewound the story 3 times to be sure. It was grainy, poorly lit, but there was no doubt. That shirt wasn't a joke. It wasn't a game from work. It was his, and now it was on her. I sat there until sunrise, the laptop still open. The image burned into my brain. She had no idea I'd seen it. But I had, and I couldn't unsee it. The next morning, the sun came up like it always did, but the light felt harsher somehow. Less warm, less honest. Lily was still asleep when I stepped into the hallway. Her side of the bed was a tangle of sheets and hair, peaceful on the surface. You'd think nothing had changed if you didn't know better. But I did. I'd seen too much to play dumb anymore. I moved through the house like a stranger. Every room now whispering a different version of the truth. And I couldn't ignore the feeling that everything around me, everything that once made sense, was suddenly foreign. The kitchen smelled like coffee and betrayal. I poured myself a cup and sat down at the table we used to eat breakfast at together. Funny, that table had hosted 1,000 quiet mornings and tired evenings. But now it just looked like a stage set. The chairs, the mugs, even the magnets on the fridge. All props in a life I didn't recognize. That pale blue shirt from the night before still hung over the back of a dining chair. Casually, like it had every right to be there. Like it wasn't a flashing red sign that something in our marriage had snapped. And now that I was paying attention, it was like the floodgates opened. The signs I'd been too blind or too trusting to notice came rushing back, one after another. Like how Lily stopped asking me to pick her up from work a few months ago. After years of saying how much she loved it when I met her out front and walked her to the car. She said she wanted to clear her head with a walk or a coffee. I believed her. Thought maybe she needed time to decompress. But now I wondered who was meeting her during those quiet moments between the office and home. Her phone was another red flag, and I hated myself for realizing it too late. It used to live on the kitchen counter, screen up, unlocked. Notifications popping up about yoga classes or group texts with her sister. But that changed gradually. First, the passcode. Then the face-down habit. Then the Bluetooth connection to our home speaker mysteriously stopped working. Always buggy, according to her. And the more I thought about it, the more the lies began lining up, like carefully placed dominoes, each one toppling into the next. Saturday nights, for example. Those were supposed to be ours. For years, it had been tradition. Movie night, takeout, sometimes a bottle of wine if we were feeling fancy. But lately, she'd been skipping them for yoga classes and, wellness nights with her coworkers. I never questioned it. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to believe that distance was just part of growth. But now I remembered what I saw in the trunk of her car last month. 2 bags. One gym bag, like she said. The other one, a small overnight tote, zipped up and hidden beneath a folded blanket. Inside were clothes that didn't look like workout gear. A silky top with tags still on. A black bra I'd never seen her wear. A tiny glass bottle of perfume that didn't belong to her usual brand. Not the floral stuff she wore around the house. This was darker, muskier, ***. At the time, I convinced myself it was nothing. A surprise for me, maybe. A birthday plan. An outfit she was saving. But now it all made sense. I walked back to our bedroom and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. She shifted slightly under the covers, one arm stretching out into the empty side of the bed. My side. The place where I used to sleep peacefully without wondering who she was really texting at night. She stirred, opened her eyes, saw me standing there. "Hey!" she mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "You okay?" I nodded, lying. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." She gave a tired smile and stretched again. "Long weekend. I feel like I need another one just to recover." I just stood there. There were words I wanted to say. Accusations I wanted to throw at her like stones. But none of them came. What was the point? She would deny everything. Or worse, twist it into something that made me look paranoid. Instead, I walked away. Later that afternoon, I found myself cleaning the garage. Not because it needed it, but because I needed to do something. I opened old storage bins, sorted tools I hadn't touched in months, rearranged lawn chairs we barely used anymore. That's when I found it. Buried in the corner behind a box of winter gear. A second phone charger. Lily never left chargers lying around. She was obsessive about them. Each one had its place. But this one, coiled neatly next to an old power bank and an empty perfume box. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. Something about it made my stomach turn. Felt like evidence. Something planted, then forgotten. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. About the gym selfies she used to send me that never made it to social media. About how her playlists had shifted from indie folk to sultry R&B. About the new lingerie I'd found in the laundry once. Not even worn, just washed and tucked away before I could ask. About the time she came home from a conference dinner with smudged lipstick and her necklace clasped wrong. Little things. Tiny things. But they weren't random anymore. They were part of a pattern I'd been too blind to see. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, too afraid to see. I wanted so badly to be wrong. To believe it was all in my head. That stress was making me paranoid. That we were just going through a rough season, and everything would settle once work slowed down or we took that trip we kept postponing. But no amount of hope could scrub away the truth now. She wasn't just pulling away. She was replacing me. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, long after she'd fallen asleep. My phone screen glowed as I opened my browser and typed in the name of the man from the Instagram story. The one whose hand had been on her waist. His name was Cameron. One of her team leads. Smiled a little too wide in his profile pictures. Lots of gym selfies. Motivational quotes. The kind of guy who probably said things like, "Work hard, play harder," without irony. And buried halfway down his tagged photos, another story from the retreat. More drinks. More laughter. Another blurry **T by the fire. And Lily. Same shirt. Only this time, her head was on his shoulder. That was the moment it all clicked. The final piece slid into place. There was no mystery left. No room for benefit of the doubt. Lily hadn't just drifted. She'd taken a different road entirely. And she wasn't looking back. A week later, I told Lily I had a night shift. That was a lie. I hadn't been assigned one in over a month. But I said it anyway. She didn't blink. Just kissed me on the cheek like she always did when I left for late work. Said, "Be safe." And went back to scrolling her phone. I watched her from the hallway before I left. Legs curled up on the couch, hair tucked behind her ear, wine glass balanced on her knee. She looked completely at ease. Not the slightest flicker of tension. She'd gotten good at it. Acting like everything was fine. That frightened me more than anything. I got in my car and drove 3 blocks before pulling over and ling the headlights. I sat in the dark for 15 minutes, waiting. Then I opened the tracking app I'd installed on her phone 3 days earlier. Her location pinged at 9:46 p.m. She wasn't at the office. She wasn't at a yoga class. She wasn't anywhere she'd ever mentioned going. She was at a private address. A gated home in a quiet suburb just outside Savannah. The kind of neighborhood with winding drives and manicured lawns. Not a place you just end up. My chest tightened. I typed the address into maps, pulled away from the curb, and drove. The route was smooth. Clean streets. No traffic. The kind of night where everything feels still, too still. Like the world knows something's about to shift but refuses to say it out loud. I parked a block from the house. My hands were sweating, but my face felt cold. My heart wasn't even pounding. It just settled into this low thud, like it was saving its strength for whatever was coming. The house was lit, tall windows glowing with warm amber light, floor-to-ceiling glass, curtains half-drawn like privacy was optional. There were cars in the driveway, 2, maybe 3. Music played faintly from inside, not loud, but enough to carry through the quiet. Laughter followed. I moved toward the side of the property. There was a stretch of low hedges that framed the yard. Just tall enough to keep me out of sight, just short enough to see what mattered. Through a narrow slit in the blinds, I spotted her. Lily, sitting on a couch I didn't recognize. Cross-legged, champagne glass in hand, laughing, head tilted back, robe sliding off her shoulder like something out of a movie. And there he was, Cameron. Same guy from the fire pit, from the shirt. He was seated beside her, too close to call it casual. His hand was on her thigh, not moving, just there. Possessive, familiar. She didn't move it away. I felt something split open in my chest. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder. A realization that went deeper than hurt. She hadn't just lied. She hadn't just distanced. She had replaced me emotionally, physically, logistically. I was out. He was in. And she didn't even flinch. I ducked lower, wiping the sweat from my palms onto my jeans. I should have walked away right then, called a friend, driven home, screamed into a pillow. But instead I stayed. Froze in place like a statue as I watched the woman I loved lean her head on someone else's shoulder. It didn't look like an affair. It looked like a relationship. Comfortable, natural, practiced. She wasn't wearing lingerie I'd seen before. It was black and sheer, elegant in a way that screamed, bought for someone else. She had always been minimal at home, t-shirts, sweats, maybe a robe on Sunday mornings. This was intentional, designed, a message. And there, on the back of the couch, was that pale blue shirt, casually tossed, like it had never left the house. Like it had always belonged there. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An Instagram story notification. I opened it with a trembling hand. Lily had just posted, "Cozy nights plus ocean air equals heaven." A boomerang of 2 champagne glasses clinking. Same couch. Same lighting. I stared at the screen like I was watching a stranger's life. A life I wasn't invited to. While she pretended to be off the grid, she was broadcasting her affair, or at least the palatable, poetic version of it, to anyone who didn't know better. And maybe that was the worst part. The way she smiled in that story. That genuine, effortless grin. She hadn't looked at me like that in over a year. I stepped back from the hedge and walked quietly to my car, each step heavier than the last. By the time I reached the driver's seat, my hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my keys. I sat there in silence, engine off, air thick with heat and disbelief. I opened the glove box and pulled out the small box of old letters I'd stashed there years ago. College days. Her handwriting back when she used to write instead of text. When love felt bigger than logistics. I pulled one out at random. The corner was creased, ink slightly faded. A letter from sophomore year. She had written it late at night. Said she missed me so much it made her stomach ache. Said she dreamed of our apartment, our dog, our future family. Said she'd never hurt me. Not in a million lifetimes. I read it twice. Then I lit a match and watched it burn on the hood of my car. Page by page I fed the fire. Each letter curled, turned to ash, floated into the humid night air like tiny betrayals finding their way out of my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched it all vanish, slowly, silently, like a funeral without guests. The final flame flickered out, leaving only scorched paper and the faint smell of ink and regret. The night didn't feel like heartbreak. Felt like confirmation. When I got back to the house, everything felt wrong. Not just emotionally, physically, tangibly. Like the walls were tilted a degree off-center and no one had noticed until now. Like the house was trying to whisper something, and I'd finally quieted down enough to hear it. It was 2:08 a.m. The streets were empty. No porch lights. No dogs barking. Even the stars looked different, farther away, colder. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Silence. Then the soft hum of the fridge. The faint click of the AC. All of it too normal for the weight I was carrying. I kicked off my shoes and walked through the living room like a ghost. Each step a quiet reckoning. Everything in that space had a memory attached to it, and now every one of those memories felt counterfeit. The throw blanket Lily loved. The chunky gray one she used to wrap herself in while watching reruns of The Office, was still draped over the arm of the couch, like it had waited for her, like it belonged to her. The framed photo from our Utah trip sat crooked on the end table. I picked it up. Zion National Park. We were standing on a cliff, squinting into the sun, arms wrapped around each other like we were invincible. I could still remember how she'd leaned into me during that *T. How she whispered, "This is forever." I set it face down. The candles on the kitchen counter were still half melted. One of them, sandalwood and vanilla, was the scent she always picked. "It makes the house feel like a hug," she once said. I opened it, sniffed once, closed it again. All it made me feel now was sick. Every room was a museum of what used to be. Our bedroom was the final nail. The bed still unmade from that morning. Her hairbrush on the dresser. A sock, just one, on the floor beside the hamper. She'd always leave one sock behind. Always, like some ritual I never understood. I stood there in the doorway for a long time, staring. Then I turned and walked out. Couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, a glass of water in one hand, my phone in the other. I scrolled past texts from friends, ignored emails, deleted 3 spam messages and a reminder to pay the gas bill. Then I opened a blank note, typed the words, "This is the night it all ended," and stared at it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. But it was true. Everything else after this would just be paperwork and dust. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I didn't want a fight. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. I didn't need screaming or tears or theatrics. That wasn't who I was. That wasn't who we were, or who I thought we were. But I also wasn't going to live like this. Not in limbo. Not pretending to be the guy who didn't know his wife had checked out months ago and packed someone else into the spot I used to fill. So I did the only thing that made sense. I started removing her. Not with rage. With precision. First, the photos. I took every frame off the walls, the wedding portrait, the honeymoon *T, the Polaroid she loved from our anniversary at the cabin. I boxed them carefully. No breaks. No torn edges. Just wrapped them up and stacked the boxes in the garage. Then came the mementos. The snow globe from Boston. The ceramic mug from Asheville. The book she annotated for me with little sticky notes in the margins. That one stung. I held it for a minute longer than I should have. Thought about reading one of the notes. I didn't. I boxed it up. Next came the kitchen. I pulled out the wine glass she always used. The one with the little scratch near the rim from when she dropped it once on the counter but insisted it gave the glass character. I held it under the faucet, rinsed it clean, then walked it straight to the trash bin and dropped it in without hesitation. I opened the fridge and tossed anything that was hers. Oat milk, chia pudding, half a bottle of rose. The salad dressing she claimed was the only kind she liked. Gone. By the time noon rolled around, it was like she'd never been there. Only the air hadn't caught on yet. It still smelled like her. That faint, floral soap she used, mixed with the subtle sweetness of the candle she lit every Sunday morning. I opened every window, ran every fan, washed the sheets, stripped the bed, took down the throw pillows. Still, it lingered. Some part of her just wouldn't leave. That afternoon, I pulled my suitcase out of the closet. Not for myself, for her. I opened her dresser drawers and began packing. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't fold anything. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't gentle either. Just methodical. Her favorite hoodie. The silk blouse I'd never seen her wear at home but always found in the wash. Her slippers. Gone. I put it all in the suitcase and set it by the door. That night, I slept in the guest room. The bed was stiff, the sheets cold. But I didn't mind. It was the first honest sleep I'd had in months. No dreams. No tossing. Just silence. When I woke the next morning, the air felt different. Cleaner. Like the house had taken a deep breath for the first time in a long time. I made coffee and stared out the window for nearly half an hour. Just watching cars pass, birds land, neighbors walk dogs. Regular life, somehow untouched by the mess unraveling in mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel panic. I felt something closer to peace. Not the kind you earn after a resolution, the kind you find once you finally stop denying the inevitable. Lily hadn't texted, hadn't called. I checked once, then turned my phone off. That night, I started a new note on my phone. I titled it, Proof, and began organizing everything I had. **TS. Dates, images, quotes from messages she thought I hadn't read. GPS logs, story captures, social media metadata, everything. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story later. Not to friends, not to her family, not in court. She could burn bridges if she wanted to, but I was going to keep the receipts. She came back on a Tuesday, late afternoon. The sun was still out, but the house was quiet. Not peaceful, just silent in a way that felt deliberate, like it was holding its breath. I heard the car door slam before I saw her. A shuffle of keys. Then the front door creaked open. She stepped inside like she owned the place. Same tired smile. Same wide eyes that scanned the living room like she'd missed it. Like she was glad to be home. But it wasn't her home anymore. Her suitcase bumped against the doorway as she pulled it in behind her. She dropped her tote bag next to it, tossed her keys in the bowl like she always did, and paused when she noticed the space. I didn't say anything. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping cold coffee, watching her. She blinked slowly, looked around. The couch was bare. No pillows, no blanket. The walls were stripped of photos. The bookshelf rearranged. The scent she used to bring in with her, that delicate perfume that once filled the space like punctuation, was drowned out by lemon cleaner and old wood. She turned to face me. "Hey," she said, a bit too casual. "You cleaned." I didn't answer. She stepped further into the house, slower now, like she was realizing something wasn't right. Her mug wasn't on the rack anymore. Her slippers weren't by the door. The framed photo that used to sit on the hallway table, the one from our first apartment, where we laughed through a hurricane blackout and took selfies with flashlights, was gone. Replaced with a potted plant. "Where's my stuff?" she asked, voice soft but cautious. I nodded toward the door. The suitcase she'd left by the entrance was zipped shut. Inside, everything that was hers or had once been was folded and packed. Next to it sat a manila envelope. She walked over slowly, picked it up. Her eyes scanned the label. Just one word in black marker. Proof. She opened it, pulling out the stack of neatly printed papers. **TS, message logs, timestamps, story captures, blown-up stills from the fire pit video, location logs, IP history, GPS pings, even the champagne photo, all ordered and labeled. A silence settled so thick it felt like fog. She flipped through them, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't move, just watched. Finally, she looked up. "You went through my stuff?" "No," I said evenly. "I saw what you wanted to hide. You just weren't very good at it." She opened her mouth, closed it. For a second I thought she might cry, but nothing came. Just that blank expression she wore whenever she was backed into a corner. "I can explain," she whispered. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd already rehearsed this in my head. "You already did," I said. "With every lie, every excuse, every night you didn't come home on time." "I was confused," she said. "No," I replied. "You were convinced I wouldn't find out." She looked around again. The emptiness seemed to finally register. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said, still clutching the folder. "But it did," I said. She stood there, completely still. Then she asked it, the question I knew would come eventually. "Is this it?" I nodded. "It was over the moment you put on someone else's shirt and walked back in here like nothing happened." Tears welled in her eyes then, but they felt delayed, like she'd remembered they were supposed to show up and cued them late. "Please," she said, "let's talk. Really talk. I know I messed up, but you're throwing it all away without trying." I stared at her. "You didn't just mess up, Lily. You built an entirely separate life and thought you could keep both. You disrespected this house, this marriage, me, and you didn't even flinch doing it." "That's not fair," she said, voice cracking. "You don't know how I felt. You don't know what it's been like." "No," I cut in. "I don't. Because you didn't tell me. You told him. You took everything you felt, everything you should have brought to me, and handed it to a stranger. And now you're standing here acting like I'm the one who gave up." She looked down. "I didn't mean to fall for him," she said quietly. And there it was. I didn't react, didn't flinch, just stared at her. "That's the first honest thing you've said since this started." We stood there in silence for a long time. Then, without a word, she bent down, zipped the suitcase shut, and stood upright again. "I'll get the rest of my things tomorrow," she said. "There is no rest," I replied. "That's everything." Her breath caught. "You cleared me out," she said. "No," I corrected. "You cleared yourself out. I just finished what you started." She picked up the suitcase and slung the tote over her shoulder. Paused at the door. "You won't even hear me out?" she asked. "I don't need to," I said. She turned back, hand on the doorknob, a storm in her eyes. "I hope you know this isn't just on me," she snapped suddenly. "You weren't perfect either. You were distant. You were checked out. You made it easy to drift." I nodded slowly. "Maybe I did," I said. "But I stayed. I worked. I kept showing up." She didn't respond. "I made mistakes," I continued. "But I didn't make someone else's bed." Her face twisted. She didn't say goodbye, just walked out, pulling the door shut behind her with more force than necessary. 3 hours later, she texted, "You didn't even fight for us. Then, you never really loved me. Then, you turned cold. You always turn cold." I didn't reply. I opened the thread, stared at it, then closed it. There was nothing to explain. Not anymore. The next day, she showed up at noon, unannounced. I didn't answer the door. She knocked for 7 minutes, pacing the porch, calling my name. Eventually, she left. The texts kept coming. First calm, then pleading, then rage, then silence. By Friday, her number was blocked. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I didn't know her any more of my headspace. I spent the weekend reorganizing, repainting the bedroom, swapping the mattress, removing her from the utility accounts, reprogramming the smart speaker to respond to my voice alone. The house didn't feel like ours anymore, and for the first time that felt like a gift. I stood in the middle of the hallway that Sunday night, arms crossed, breathing in the scent of new paint and fresh linen. No photos, no perfume, no half-lies waiting around corners. Just space. Still, quiet, honest. A house becoming mine again.